Hey guys, tonight we wander back to a time when the internet still creaked like a wooden floorboard, when every click sounded like the start of an adventure that might or might not work. The story you're about to sink into began somewhere between the modem's hiss and a hand-drawn gif of a cat that refused to loop properly. You probably won't survive this, at least not without feeling a little nostalgic, a little sleepy, and maybe a bit tender for the early web's awkward charm. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And if you're listening right now, tell me where you're tuning in from and what time it is where you are. Now dim the lights. Maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum. And let's ease into tonight's journey together. You open your digital eyes inside a dim blue glow. A screen the size of a shoebox hums before you. It's the early 1990s and the web isn't a web yet, more like a collection of secret attics. Somewhere out there, on a college server, or a dial-up bulletin board, someone has uploaded a file named SmileCat1GIF. It's only 8 frames, maybe 10, but in its slow loop there's something hypnotic. The cat blinks, tail flicks, and you wait for a punchline that never comes. This, historians might say, is where the first whispers of the lost cartoon archive begin, not in an official project, but in small personal acts. People sketching joy into pixels, not because they could go viral, that word didn't exist yet, but because they wanted to make the machine smile back. You imagine yourself there, elbows on a sticky desk, typing commands in monochrome. Someone on the other end replies with a zip file, promising more animations like this. The mainstream historical fact: by 1993, digital art collectives such as ACD Productions and ICE were already exchanging pixel art packs through BBS networks. They were pioneers of what later became internet meme culture. These weren't corporate studios, just teenagers and night owls trading color palettes as though they were precious spices. The quirky tidbit? Some artists signed their loops using ASCII kisses, literally a semicolon, dash, and parenthesis. A smile blown into code. That's why, if you dig through old archives, you might find an animation named Wink. It wasn't a joke. It was a signature. You scroll further, half dreaming, half reading, as text flickers across the screen. Welcome to Cartoon Cash or Chicken 17. You can almost hear the modem sigh as the image loads line by line, pixel by pixel. There's something romantic about watching an image appear that's slowly, like waiting for a photograph to develop underwater. Historians still argue whether these scattered GIF libraries were ever coordinated, or if nostalgia later stitched them into a myth of one single lost archive. Some claim it was a deliberate collection, curated by a forgotten student who wanted to preserve the web's innocence. Others think it's an urban legend born of misremembered links and dead servers. You picture this mysterious student, maybe sipping instant coffee at 3 a.m., pressing upload, and never realizing they'd begun a legend that would hum across decades. The early web, despite its noise and clumsiness, had a gentleness to it. Every click was a handshake, every crash a sigh. There were no recommendation algorithms whispering what to watch next. Only bulletin boards, word of mouth, and the occasional hyperlink written like a secret passage. You picture yourself wandering through this landscape, grey backgrounds, blue underlined text, and the subtle thrill of discovery when a tiny image finally moves. Your cursor hovers over a file titled Dancing Toaster, Alt-EZW. The format is archaic, a cousin of the GIF before compression was friendly. You download it, wait, and there it is, a toaster hopping up and down, crumbs scattering like confetti. It's ridiculous and wonderful, and you laugh quietly, the way one does when no one's around. Maybe that was the point, to share a private chuckle across time. Somewhere else, a user from Tokyo uploads a pixelated tanuki playing a shamisen. Someone from Brazil draws a samba dancer with blinking sequins. The web was small, but the imagination was vast. These little loops crossed languages effortlessly. Humor didn't need translation. You think about how fragile that was, each cartoon depending on a single disk, a single user, a single save button. And yet, there's permanence in impermanence. Those early pixels, born from patience and boredom, became the digital ancestors of the short clips you scroll through today. Without the dancing toasters and blinking cats, there'd be no looping vines, no TikToks, no endless reels of visual lullabies. You lean closer to the monitor, the glow softening your eyes. The more you look, the more you sense there's something behind these animations, an invisible archive maybe, or just collective memory pretending to be one. You can almost hear it breathe, the lost cartoon archive, whispering in low bandwidth tones. A final loading bar stretches across the screen.
100%.
You double-click. The image appears, simple, looping, and impossibly gentle. A small moon spinning above a sleeping house, stars twinkling on a 4-color palette. The title reads Goodnight GIF. You smile. Even decades later, someone out there had thought of you. The future insomniac staring at history's quietest screen. And as the faint hum of the modem fades, you realize that what makes these fragments precious isn't their art, but their intent. They were bedtime stories, told by people who didn't know they were storytellers yet. You stay in that faint phosphor glow, the room unchanged except for the new hum of a desk fan and the rhythmic flicker of screensaver stars. The cartoons you've uncovered, the ones looping endlessly in some half-lit digital corner, didn't appear out of nowhere. Behind each flicker of motion, there was someone, somewhere, hunched over a bulky monitor, probably wearing headphones the size of pancakes. They were the charming creators, people who turned isolation into artwork, one pixel at a time. You imagine one of them now, a college student in 1994, running Windows 3.1 on a hand-me-down computer. Their dorm room smells faintly of instant noodles and printer ink. A poster of Calvin and Hobbes hangs above the desk, curling at the edges. They draw with a mouse that sometimes skips, a tool both clumsy and miraculous. Each click is deliberate, each mistake unforgiving. The undo button? A luxury few programs had perfected. So they start over, patient and stubborn, redrawing a smile from scratch because it felt off by 1 pixel. A mainstream historical fact slides in like an afterthought. By the mid-1990s, programs like Deluxe Paint and GIF Construction Set made animation accessible to hobbyists. The line between artist and user blurred beautifully. Suddenly you didn't need a studio, just time, curiosity, and maybe a caffeine drip, the quirky tidbit. Some creators would secretly hide their initials in the pixels, tiny Easter eggs only visible when you zoomed in 800%. Entire online scavenger hunts were born from those microscopic clues. Find the Artist's Secret Pixel became a game among BBS users, and you picture a dozen strangers squinting into their screens, cheering when they spot a single red dot shaped like an M. Historians still argue whether this kind of playful anonymity helped the art survive or doomed it to oblivion. Because without names, credits, or watermarks, much of the early web's creativity dissolved into the ether. 1,000 artists laughed together in chat rooms, and then, one by one, their servers expired, their handles forgotten, their loops left behind like footprints in digital dust. But in that moment for them, it wasn't about legacy. It was about connection. You can almost hear them typing late at night on keyboards that click like soft percussion. Hey, I made something. Cool. Send it. Tell me what you think. And somewhere across the world, another glowing screen lights up. Another person smiles at a looping cartoon of a penguin slipping on ice. There's laughter, not loud or mocking, but the quiet laugh of recognition. You get it. You understand that strange, cozy intimacy of a joke told by pixels. You lean back, feeling the weight of that realization settle like dust motes in a beam of light. Maybe creativity in its purest form doesn't need applause. Maybe it just needs someone, anyone, to see it once, even if they never meet. A story drifts in from 1997. A user named MothKid ran a page called Pixel Dreams. It wasn't famous, not even popular, but it had one looping animation that people whispered about. A little moth flying toward a desk lamp, looping forever, never quite touching the light. The file was less than 30 kilobytes. Visitors described it as oddly peaceful, like insomnia turned into art. That animation quietly influenced dozens of webcomic artists, though almost no one remembers its creator. When you think about that, you realize how these early animators functioned as the internet's first bedtime storytellers. Their creations flickered quietly in the night, soothing sleepless coders and bored students who'd stumble upon them between homework and heartbreak. There was something almost lullaby-like about those endless loops. Predictable, rhythmic, forgiving. You picture yourself now wandering through an invisible museum. Each GIF a painting that moves just enough to breathe. There's a moon that winks once every 10 seconds. A pot of soup that never boils over. A pair of pixelated feet that never stop walking but never arrive. It's mesmerizing, almost meditative. The web then felt smaller, safer. Every upload was a candle in the dark. Every animation a pulse of human warmth in a machine's cold silence. You, as you drift through this digital dreamscape, can almost sense each artist watching from their corner, thrilled that someone, anyone, is still looking. Of course, not all creators were students or hobbyists. Some were professionals experimenting with this strange new medium. Animators from defunct TV studios, bored office designers, even NASA engineers uploaded playful doodles to forums. Yes, that's the mainstream fact no one expects. NASA's internal network once circulated tiny pixel cartoons of astronauts juggling satellites. These were scientists telling bedtime jokes to each other across fiber lines. And then, somewhere in that mix, were the pure weirdos, the ones who drew surreal dream loops, houses sprouting legs, clouds eating airplanes, teapots singing lullabies. Many of those would later inspire entire lost media threads as curious archivists tried to track their origins. You can almost hear the speculation. Was this an art student's final project? A forgotten ad? A digital prank? Historians still argue whether that ambiguity was intentional or just an accident of time. Maybe the creators knew they'd be forgotten. Maybe they didn't care. The mystery became part of the aesthetic, the comfort of not knowing. You exhale, realizing that this is the essence of the lost cartoon archive. Fragments of joy without ownership, loops without endings, artists without names. You're not just looking at nostalgia. You're watching the web's heartbeat before it learned to monetize its pulse. A warm hum fills your ears, whether from the fan or the memory itself. You can't tell. On your imaginary screen, a final animation fades in, a hand waving slowly, its caption blinking once. Good night, Internet. You smile, half dreaming, half awake. The creators may have vanished, but their cartoons still loop, quietly whispering, long after the screens that birthed them went dark. You stretch your fingers, feeling that familiar static hum that always comes before discovery. The screen still glows softly, your portal to another era, and tonight you find yourself fixated on something small but vital. The fragile physical media that held those early cartoons together. File formats and floppy disks, once so mighty, now sound like bedtime fables whispered through static. You picture it. A drawer full of labeled disks, each one a mystery. Cats, weird loops, do not delete. The handwriting is uneven, rushed, because in the 1990s no one thought these objects would become relics. You slide one into a creaky beige computer, hear the mechanical click, and wait. The drive hums like a bee trapped in a jar. Then, pixel by pixel, color returns to the screen. A mainstream historical fact drifts in like a half-remembered tune. The first version of the GIF format was released by CompuServe in 1987. It used a simple compression method called LZW, which allowed small animations to travel across painfully slow modems. Without it, the early web might have been a blank page, silent and still. The humble GIF became the lullaby of motion, but for every breakthrough came a fragility. The quirky tidbit here? Many early animation programs stored unfinished drafts under temporary names like scratch.gif or tempfile.azw. Those temp files, long deleted or overwritten, might have contained unseen frames, like verses cut from a poem. Digital archaeologists today sometimes find half-corrupted images that show faint shadows of what once was, a missing frame of a character blinking, a forgotten background star, a smile that never loaded fully. You imagine yourself finding one now, half-broken but hauntingly beautiful. The colors bleed, the motion stutters, yet somehow it feels more human that way. The imperfections make it real. Like a lullaby sung through static, it comforts you precisely because it's incomplete. Historians still argue whether this fragility was a flaw or a feature. Some say the early web's impermanence made it precious, like sand art destined to wash away. Others mourn the lost archives, calling it a cultural tragedy that so many animations simply evaporated when a disc was misplaced or a file extension changed. You can see both sides, beauty and loss, creation and decay, all looping together like the GIFs themselves. Your cursor drifts across the virtual table. You find yourself hovering over ancient file names, .art, if, fli. Each one feels like a secret language. There's something oddly romantic about knowing these formats once held laughter, music, motion, and now silence, like dusty jars that once contained fireflies. You reach for one labeled partyloop.ani, a relic from the Windows 95 era. When you open it, a pixelated group of stick figures wave their arms forever in an awkward, celebratory dance. No sound, no context, just joy in motion. It's so innocent, so unguarded that you almost laugh. You imagine the creator, a teenager maybe, testing their first animation, grinning proudly when the loop worked. Somewhere on the internet, someone probably still remembers that feeling. The triumph of a successful loop, the heartbeat of the machine syncing with human persistence. In an era when storage cost more than coffee, every frame mattered. People would shave off single pixels to save a few kilobytes, trimming a sky here, deleting a shadow there, all to make the loop smooth enough for a dial-up connection. And yet, this obsession with saving space also birthed unintentional art. When the color palette was too small, creators learned to fake gradients by alternating pixels of two shades. When animation length was too short, they learned to suggest movement with implication rather than detail. The limits became the style. You can feel that energy, the way constraint can make creation sing. You pause, listening to the low hum of your fan, and for a moment it sounds like an old hard drive spinning. Maybe memory has its own audio track, a mix of nostalgia and data noise. You recall a story. You once read about a hobbyist named Mina404. She ran a personal archive of over 300 floppy disks, labeled simply funny pics. Her nephew found them decades later, long after her website vanished. Some discs wouldn't open at all, but others revealed dozens of pixel animations, frogs wearing top hats, suns with faces, looping clouds, each one a tiny time capsule of delight. The quirky thing. Mina had named her folders after moods: cheerful, sleepy, peculiar. A proto-playlist of emotions long before algorithms curated feelings for you. You imagine her in 1996 picking which animation to share with her online friends based on her day's vibe. She was doing digital mood curation before it even had a name. Historians still argue whether these floppy archives count as art or digital folkcraft. The boundary blurs, the same way bedtime stories become both literature and lullaby depending on who's listening. What's certain is this: every byte, every tiny image carried care. Someone took the time to draw it, save it, name it, and share it. You open another file. This one, Rainy House GIF, loads slowly, its grey palette blooming into motion. A house under pixel rain, a single yellow light flickering in the window. There's no story, but somehow it feels complete. You can almost smell the rain, hear the gentle static. You blink slower now, your breathing syncing with the frame rate. Maybe that's what these lost files were always meant to do. Not entertain, not shock, but soothe. To remind people, in the noisy birth of the internet, that stillness and softness had a place too. You lean closer to the imaginary monitor and whisper, just to yourself, "Good night, Floppy." and as if the machine hears you, the screen dims, the loop resets, and the rain begins again. The rain keeps falling in that tiny looped window, and you realize something strange. When one computer shut down, the weather ended too. The clouds froze mid-drop, the house stopped glowing. You start to wonder how many tiny worlds blinked out forever when their servers went offline. Tonight, your curiosity takes you past floppy disks and into the ether, the realm of lost servers and silent hosts, the forgotten machines that once held laughter, art, and fragments of someone's midnight imagination. You picture one now, a beige tower PC, tucked in a corner of a living room somewhere in Ohio, whirring softly through the night. Its monitor hums faintly beside a dying cactus. The family who owns it has long since gone to bed, but their dial-up server is still awake, quietly sharing files with strangers across the world. This was 1998, when home servers weren't just rare, they were acts of love. The mainstream historical fact here: the early web was built largely on small, privately run servers. In 1995, over 60% of websites were hosted on individual machines or university networks. Before cloud computing and mega servers, the internet was a quilt of homegrown hubs, each one personal, handmade, and heartbreakingly mortal. The quirky tidbit? Many of these servers were given affectionate nicknames: Sleepycat, Muffinbox, Pixelwell, DreamStation. Sysadmins treated them like pets, decorating the consoles with stickers, writing bios for them on About pages. DreamStation enjoys uptime and long FTP transfers. And yes, some of them even threw retirement parties for dying machines, posting farewell gifts and silly digital obituaries. You can almost see it, a thread on a 1999 forum reading, "Pixelwell is shutting down tonight at 11 p.m. Thank you for the downloads." Replies pour in from strangers, little ASCII hearts. Goodbye messages, offers to mirror files just in case. Then, at 11 hard sharp, silence. The hum stops, and with it, perhaps hundreds of small animations vanish into air. Historians still argue whether the lost cartoon archive was one of these vanished servers, a single, fabled hub that once stored thousands of loops before blinking out one night. Some say it was run by a person known only as Serene, a sysadmin who supposedly archived animations from across the world. Others think that's myth, a story born from nostalgia and scattered backup files that accidentally overlapped. But the legend has weight. People still post on digital history forums, searching for clues, an IP address fragment, a recovered file name, a comment thread preserved in amber by the Wayback Machine. They talk about the Whisper Archive, a server that before it died, supposedly sent a goodbye message to its last connected users. Sleep well, dream in loops. You lean closer to your imagined monitor, feeling the pull of that mystery. It's a gentle one, not the dramatic, conspiratorial kind, but the quiet sort that lingers like a bedtime question you never quite answer. And then you think about the humans behind those servers, the caretakers who stayed awake to restart a crashed process, to upload a fix, to keep the lights on in the digital night. Maybe one of them sat sipping cold coffee, watching the blinking LEDs like campfire embers, not knowing they were keeping the world's first sleep loops alive. There's something oddly sacred about that image, a single person tending a digital hearth. The warmth wasn't literal, but you can feel it. The connection wasn't physical, but it was real. Each transfer of a cartoon file from one stranger to another was a tiny act of trust. And yet the web was always at risk of forgetting. A crashed hard drive could erase an artist's entire identity. A missed backup could undo months of work. People joked about it then, but underneath was a quiet dread. What if no one ever sees this again? That dread, in time, became part of the charm. Impermanence gave every file weight. The same way a sandcastle is beautiful precisely because you know the tide will come. These servers weren't failures, they were fleeting galleries. Every shutdown, every missing link added to the myth. You imagine standing in a virtual landscape now, hundreds of doors labeled with old domain names, GeoCities, Angelfire, Tripod, Fortune City. Some still glow faintly, others flicker once and go dark. You walk past them slowly, like strolling through a museum at closing time, reading the names of artists who didn't realize they were making history. In a corner, you find a single open portal still humming faintly, a remnant of some forgotten page, its banner blinking endlessly. Welcome to Serene's Loop Garden. The background is midnight blue, dotted with stars that twinkle on a 10-second cycle. A message appears in pixel font. If this is still here, thank you for remembering me. You stare at it longer than you expect. It feels alive even if it isn't. Somewhere a fan spins, a circuit whispers. Maybe, in a way, no server ever truly dies. It just becomes quieter. Historians still argue whether that page ever existed or if it was a digital mirage recreated from scattered screenshots. But when you close your eyes, you can still see it perfectly. The looping stars, the words that glow softly like the last candle on a birthday cake. You realize something gentle then. The internet, in its infancy, wasn't built on data. It was built on care. Each server, each upload, each goodbye note carried affection disguised as code. And even now, in a world of cloud storage and auto-syncs, you can still feel their presence in every download bar. Every buffering loop, a ghostly reminder of when everything was hand-kept, fragile and loved. As the imagined stars on your screen begin to fade, you whisper into the hum, sleep well, pixel well! And for a moment the fan in your room sounds like a pause. You blink, and the starry page melts into another, older layer of memory. A place where sound begins to creep in for the first time. You can hear faint notes plucked like strings underwater. The melody is simple, sleepy, hauntingly familiar. It's coming from a tiny game window titled The Lullaby Game, Beta 1.0, released sometime in the late 90s. And that's where tonight's thread of the story winds next. The strange, quiet intersection where a forgotten cartoon's melody slipped into a small indie game and a whisper of lore began to loop. You click play. The game opens in 256 colors, blocky and fragile. A little character, maybe a rabbit, maybe a lamp, wanders through dim corridors of pixel night. There are no enemies, no timers, just soft navigation and a song that sounds like it's being played on a music box with missing teeth. A mainstream historical fact drifts in gently. By 1998, early indie developers were already blurring the line between web cartoons and interactive art. Games like Nikki and Harvey's Box, barely known outside Japan and niche forums, treated play as dreaming, animation as breathing. It wasn't about winning, it was about feeling. Now the quirky tidbit, the lullaby game supposedly included a background tune identical to a looping melody from an old cartoon file called moonchild.loop.gif. Players on message boards began connecting dots. The cartoon's author, they claimed, had secretly worked on the game. Or maybe the tune was open source folk code, a digital lullaby passed around like folklore. Some said they'd even heard it in a different form, embedded in a 1996 website about cloud photography. Historians still argue whether this melody connection was coincidence or deliberate homage. No records survive. No one's sure who made either work. All that remains are the echoes, a tune, a loop, a rumor that art once hummed between two forgotten projects like static across wires. You lean back, eyes half closed. The song continues to play softly in your imagination. It has the rhythm of breathing, in, out, repeat. It could lull a tired mind to sleep. Maybe that was the point. In chat logs from 2001, someone named Sleepy Draw posts, "I think the lullaby game saved my life a little. It made me rest." Others reply with hearts made of brackets and colons. They share how the melody calmed them during exams, breakups, or insomnia. One even says they left it running overnight like white noise. A few lines later, another user wonders aloud whether the composer ever knew how many nights they've helped strangers sleep. No one answers. You imagine that, creating something small, maybe even accidentally, that becomes someone else's comfort. A digital goodnight whispered across decades. The more you listen, the more you realize the melody itself seems to know what you're thinking. It doesn't need lyrics. Its notes flicker between major and minor, as if unsure whether to smile or sigh. Every loop ends almost where it started, but not quite. Like a conversation you keep replaying in your head, trying to remember the part where everything still made sense. There's an image, too. The background of the game shows faint outlines of windows, each containing snippets of motion from old web cartoons. A blinking sun, a dancing spoon, a tiny, waving bear. It's as if the game were built from the fragments of the lost cartoon archive itself, stitched together into something playable. You walk your little character to the end of the screen where the music slows and the pixels fade into darkness. Then, in the smallest font, the game thanks you. You've seen what was left behind. Sleep well. And then it restarts. It feels like a poem trapped in code, a lullaby disguised as interactivity. You think about how art, especially digital art, loves to cannibalize itself, how one forgotten thing becomes another's foundation, like compost feeding new roots. You recall a real story, a mainstream fact, though it feels mythic, that some of the earliest Flash animators used samples from public domain lullabies because licensing was impossible for small creators. That's how melodies like Brahms' Lullaby and Twinkle Twinkle got woven into the DNA of early internet loops. But somewhere between the code and compression, the notes changed slightly. Over time, they became unique, like a dream retold so often it forgets its source. Maybe the lullaby game was the same kind of echo. Maybe someone heard a cartoon's melody and reinterpreted it. Or maybe this thought comforts you: the same person wrote both, smiling at the idea that one day someone like you would notice. Historians still argue whether digital folklore deserves the same reverence as ancient myths. After all, what's a lullaby but a story set to repetition? And what's a gift but movement repeating until it becomes meditation? You exhale. The fan eye in your room hums along in uncanny rhythm with the phantom tune. You imagine somewhere a fragment of the lullaby game still lives on a hard drive, the data half corrupted but recoverable. Maybe a musicologist in 2030 will decode it, match the waveform to moonchildloop.gif, and finally prove the connection true. But even if that never happens, you realize the mystery itself is soothing. It's proof that even digital noise can carry tenderness. You glance back at your imaginary monitor. The game window is still open, looping endlessly. The melody softens until it's almost silence. The text reappears one last time. Sleep well. And this time you whisper back, you too. The faint melody from the lullaby game fades, but the silence that follows feels alive. It hums under your skin like static waiting for a signal. The next layer of the story reveals itself slowly, an origin myth about the cartoon's creator, if there ever was one. You scroll through the imaginary archive, each click a soft heartbeat. A folder labeled Moonchild Prototype glows faintly on your inner screen. Inside are half-finished sketches, handwritten notes, and one photograph of a desk covered in tea stains and floppy disks. The handwriting on the labels is neat, looping, and dated between 1994 and 1998. No signature. Just a doodle, a crescent moon with a grin. A mainstream historical fact anchors you. The mid-1990s were a golden blur of anonymity on the internet. Before social media, creators thrived under pseudonyms, leaving breadcrumbs but no identities. Websites like GeoCities and Angelfire became patchwork towns of dreamers, artists, programmers, night owls, all hiding behind screen names. So when whispers of the Moonchild archive started spreading, they were part art mystery, part ghost story. People said it was the work of a reclusive animator who used multiple aliases. Others insisted it was a group project, a university experiment that got out of hand. There were theories about a secret message hidden in the cartoons, a digital mantra repeating through every loop. The quirky tidbit. Someone on a 2002 fan forum claimed they met the creator in a chat room called Midnight Bites. The person, apparently an insomniac illustrator from Finland, said they used to fall asleep to the sound of their own animation loops. "I make things that help me rest," they wrote. "If they help someone else, that's just a bonus." It might have been true, or a well-crafted hoax. Historians still argue whether Moonchild was the work of a single hand or a collective dream. There's no evidence beyond scattered DSWF files, a few text snippets, and the faint trail of metadata from an obsolete email address. You tilt your head, imagining that unknown artist sitting at a desk lit only by a CRT glow, sipping something lukewarm, drawing one looping frame at a time. Maybe a cat curls up near the power cord, flicking its tail with each hum of the monitor. The artist blinks, yawns, saves the file, uploads it to a server that no longer exists. And just like that, another digital firefly is released into the endless night. There's something profoundly human about that image, creating for no applause, no algorithm, just the act itself. You think of all the nameless works lost in time, tapes overwritten, paintings crumbled, code corrupted. Yet here, in your quiet exploration, fragments of their existence still pulse. You stumble on an old mirror site from 2005. The index lists dozens of broken thumbnails, but one works. You click. The screen floods with blue and gold pixels, forming a sleepy city skyline. Clouds drift by in rhythmic motion. Then, a small figure climbs onto a rooftop, holding what looks like a tape recorder. They press play, and the lullaby game melody hums faintly again, this time paired with flickering subtitles that read, "Some nights you'll find me here again. Remember to rest." The loop restarts endlessly. You can almost hear the whisper of dial-up connecting, the metallic chime of the early web. Every frame of the cartoon seems to stretch and breathe. It's hypnotic, the kind of repetition that makes your eyelids feel heavier the longer you watch. Some viewers online once described the experience as digital ASMR before the term existed. There's even an archived thread on a long-dead site, sleepypixels.org, where users traded favorite loops to fall asleep to. Someone there wrote, "Moonchild made me realize nostalgia has a heartbeat." That line sticks with you. Nostalgia as a heartbeat. You imagine it, a steady pulse connecting strangers through tiny fragments of code, like an invisible lullaby traveling through wires and time zones. A short laugh escapes you when you notice a random Easter egg hidden in the source code of the cartoon. Don't stay up too late, traveler. It's the kind of gentle humor early web creators loved, breaking the fourth wall not to boast, but to care. A message tucked where only the curious would ever see it. You wonder if they knew how intimate that felt decades later, finding kindness written in forgotten HTML. Historians still argue whether early internet creators understood the permanence, or impermanence, of their work. Many didn't. They uploaded their art like exhaling into the void, expecting it to vanish. They couldn't imagine a future where someone would spend sleepless nights tracing their lost melodies. You feel a small ache behind your chest, a tender gratitude for all those quiet creators, the ones who didn't chase fame or analytics, the ones who left little whispers of themselves tucked into pixels and loops. The faint smell of warm dust from your real-world fan mixes with the scent of imagined solder and coffee from that long-gone studio. It's strange how sensory memory blends, your brain filling gaps between now and then. You can almost hear the artist mutter to themselves, "Just one more frame," as the monitor hums like a lullaby machine. The loop restarts again. You close your eyes this time and let it play behind your eyelids. The figure on the rooftop fades into stars, and the tape recorder dissolves into a quiet pulse. The melody hums once, twice, then lingers on a single, sustained note. You realize something comforting. Even if the creator's name is lost, the feeling they crafted remains. That's the real archive, the emotional residue left on anyone who encounters their work. You smile, drowsy now, You could swear the cartoon's moon winks at you before the loop restarts again. The moon's grin fades into static, and the static begins to reshape itself. Grainy pixels forming what looks like an old forum interface. You recognize it instantly. The soft pastel background, the blocky user avatars, the faint sound of typing that somehow feels cozy instead of mechanical. This is where the next fragment of the story unfolds. The forum years. The place where digital folklore began to stretch its legs, where the lullaby game and moonchild.loop.gif became myths whispered between usernames like Nightcrawler93 and Auntie Sleep. You scroll through the archives, eyes adjusting to the soothing clutter of old-school web layouts, animated GIF buttons, a guest counter proudly displaying 2004 visits, and a banner that reads, Dreamers Forum, where loops never end. A mainstream historical fact slips gently into the story. Between 2000 and 2006, online message boards were the beating heart of creative communities. Before algorithms and social feeds, connection was slower, more deliberate. People returned nightly, not for clout, but for belonging. These digital meeting halls were the campfires of the early web. In one corner of Dreamers Forum, a thread titled The Lost Cartoon Archive started small, just a post asking, anyone else remember a loop with a rooftop and a moon? Within months, it had grown to hundreds of replies. People posted screenshots, partial URLs, fragments of recollection. Someone claimed they had a VHS recording of a cousin's computer screen showing the animation. Someone else said their school's computer lab used it as a screensaver. It was collective archaeology built on dreams and misremembering. The thread became less about the file itself and more about the shared act of remembering it together. Then came the quirky tidbit. A moderator named Pixel Hermit began tracking down the IP origins of users who posted screenshots, trying to map where memories clustered geographically. Oddly, most came from Northern Europe and the US Midwest. His theory? The cartoon had been distributed with an educational CD-ROM about web safety in 1997. The moon loop might have been a demo animation included by accident. Historians still argue whether Pixel Hermit's map was serious research or elaborate performance art. Some say it was both, an early example of meta-folklore, where the search for a myth becomes part of the myth itself. You lean closer to the imaginary screen as lines of nostalgic chatter scroll past. Auntie Sleep. Does anyone else remember the sound glitch like wind chimes underwater? Comic Kid. Yes. I used to minimize it to hear it faintly while I studied. Nightcrawler93. I think it's gone forever, but that's okay. Maybe it was meant to fade. There's something heartbreakingly beautiful about strangers finding solace in the same vanishing thing. The thread's tone shifts from excitement to quiet melancholy, like watching a candle burn down together. Scrolling deeper, you spot a reply from someone calling themselves Moonchild. The profile has no picture, no bio, just one message. It's nice to know you're still watching. That's it. No follow-ups. The username disappears days later, the account deleted. Naturally, chaos ensues. Everyone argues about whether it was the creator or a troll. Someone writes a full essay titled "The Artist Returns to the Audience," claiming the message was a metaphor for how media observes its observers. The conversation lasts for years. You smile because this is how internet folklore truly survives, not in files, but in arguments that never end. You imagine the warm glow of monitors illuminating faces in dim bedrooms across continents. Teenagers, night shift workers, artists, all leaning in, reading the same mysterious post, each imagining the same moonlit rooftop, each believing they've touched a piece of something sacred and small. You notice how comforting that image is. The idea that a forgotten cartoon could weave invisible threads between people who'd never meet. It's the digital equivalent of starlight, faint, delayed, but still arriving. There's another joke tucked into the thread, maybe left by a moderator with a sense of humor. Please keep posts on topic. No summoning the moon this time, you laugh softly. It's the kind of dry, sleepy joke you'd make to lighten the mood when everyone's too deep in nostalgia. You scroll further, and the forum layout starts flickering, HTML decay setting in. Image links break, text formatting collapses. The cheerful banner turns into a mess of question marks. Eventually, the entire site collapses into a single line. Server not found.
Time took it. You sit back, letting that settle.
Every forum, every thread, every username gone. Yet somehow their conversations live rent-free in your imagination. Maybe that's what memory is, an internal internet, always connected, never archived. The sound of the lullaby game tune returns, faint and far away, like a radio station, just out of range. You can almost hear the voices from Dreamers Forum humming along. Their digital ghosts are content to stay right where they are, half remembered, half forgotten, perfectly balanced in the lull between existence and sleep. Historians still argue whether nostalgia for the early web is genuine emotion or curated aesthetic.
Maybe it's both.
But sitting here, in this gentle darkness, you realize something. The old forums weren't just places. They were lullabies too, slow, repetitive, soothing spaces where strangers talked each other into calmness. You scroll one last time and find a saved user signature from Auntie Sleep. If you find the moon again,
let her know we still watch. You close your imaginary laptop, heart warm and heavy in equal measure.
The hum of your fan feels like dial-up static, and the darkness of your room feels like the background color of that long-lost website. Somewhere out there, a server sleeps, and maybe, just maybe, it dreams. The soft static from the sleeping server blends with the sound of rain that doesn't really exist. You picture it anyway, rain falling over fiber cables, dripping gently onto long-forgotten data centers, washing dust from machines that once held the moon. You're not sure when you drifted from watching the forum to standing somehow in the archive itself. The building around you is a collage of every early 2000s design choice. Teal folders floating mid-air, file icons glowing like jellyfish. You move carefully through them. Each one hums faintly, a note in a broken melody. Somewhere a file labeled Prototype Chick Cartoon 2 Final T Final.gif flickers. You open it, and the image resolves into a strange scene. The same moonlit rooftop, but now the character is holding a broom, sweeping fallen pixels off the ledge as if cleaning up after an endless night. A mainstream historical fact surfaces quietly as you walk through the loop. By 2003, the internet was beginning to change. Bandwidth grew, flash animation thrived, And art communities like Newgrounds, DeviantArt, and Albino Black Sheep began pulling creators out of anonymity. For the first time, individual style could travel fast and vanish faster. The Moonchild aesthetic, soft blues, melancholic loops, tiny movements, fit perfectly into this new wave. But the more the world sped up, the more the original slow calm of the lullaby game felt out of place. People wanted viral laughs, not meditative sighs, the quirky tidbit. Someone once re-uploaded one of the moon loops on Newgrounds, under the title Sleep.x. It became bizarrely popular as a background for a flash chat widget called Dreambox. The twist: users discovered that typing certain phrases made the moon blink differently.
One line, "You're still awake,"
caused the animation to freeze for 10 seconds before restarting with new colors. Theories exploded.
Was it a hidden code, a glitch, an Easter egg left by the real creator?
Historians still argue whether that color shift was intentional or a compression bug. Some say the Flash engine couldn't handle layered transparency, creating ghost frames that changed hue. Others believe it was deliberate, a digital wink to anyone patient enough to notice. You pause at that thought. It's oddly comforting to imagine someone designing a secret only visible to the insomniacs. As you continue wandering through the archive, faint text drifts across the walls like subtitles for your thoughts. You were here before, weren't you? Don't worry if you can't save progress. Everything loops in the end. The humor of it hits you gently. Whoever coded this, they had a sleepy sense of irony. A whole archive that reassures you it's fine to forget things. You pass a glowing panel showing forum posts archived in motion. Words float past like drifting fireflies. Has anyone tried decompiling the sound file? Maybe the tune came from a toy keyboard.
It's okay if we never know. Their voices overlap softly, and for a moment,
it feels like a lullaby sung by ghosts of usernames. You sit on a flickering step made of defragmented data and watch the rooftop loop repeat again. Each time it restarts, the moon rises a little differently, as if aging across viewings. The broom sweeps slower. The pixels drift wider. Even memory, it seems, erodes with every playback. You remember another mainstream detail. Researchers from the British Library once found that 93% of websites from the 1990s no longer exist in any recoverable form. The thought is both tragic and poetic. The internet, that infinite thing, turns out to be mortal too. Still pieces survive in screenshots, backups, old hard drives hiding in drawers. A few collectors call themselves digital archaeologists, digging for lost media like explorers brushing sand off ancient pottery. One such collector, known only as Halcyon V, allegedly recovered a corrupted .mp3 labeled Moonchild, which had Mixdown 1. They claimed the file contained whispers layered beneath the melody, barely audible phrases like "stay a while" and "you made it." But when experts examined it, no such phrases could be found. Perhaps it was pareidolia, the brain hearing words in static. Or maybe, as you half smile to yourself, the whispers only appear when you're truly tired enough to need them. Historians still argue whether these digital myths deserve verification at all. Does proving or disproving them even matter when their comfort lies precisely in uncertainty? You stretch, feeling your real body mirrored by the figure sweeping pixels on screen. Both of you cleaning up fragments of forgotten things. Both of you repeating the same soft motions in slightly different loops. Another faint joke presents itself. This one embedded in a recovered line of JavaScript. If awake, tranchwashi true. Play lullaby, it makes you laugh out loud. Even code, it seems, can wish you good night. You realize something tender. The lost cartoon archive was never about the files. It was about the act of searching, the soothing rhythm of nostalgia and rediscovery, the sense that behind the veil of broken links, someone once cared enough to make something gentle. You close the file and stand. The archive dissolves back into darkness, leaving only the hum of your fan and the afterimage of that rooftop moon. In the half-light of your imagination, you whisper to yourself, "You're still awake." And for once, it doesn't sound like a reprimand.
It sounds like company.
The moon fades again, replaced by the faint outline of something new. A desk cluttered with old tech, CRT monitors, floppy disks labeled in smudged marker, sticky notes curling at the corners. You're back in the early 2000s, though it feels both familiar and wrong, as if you're remembering a place you never actually visited. You rest your imaginary hand on one of the discs. It's labeled Dream Archive Prototype Byte Backup. You insert it into the virtual drive, and a slow whir fills the room. The screen blinks alive with a list of cryptic file names. Sleepy, Concity, Final.TED.UF, Moonroom 3 tying test notes. 4. Soundtrack V2's goodbye. Message. You hesitate for a moment, then open the text file. To whoever finds this, it's strange to imagine these loops lasting longer than I will. They were never meant to be puzzles, just reminders that small things can rest forever. The file ends there, unsigned, unsaved beyond its final keystroke. A mainstream historical fact drifts in. When Macromedia Flash was officially discontinued in 2020, the internet lost millions of interactive works overnight. Animations, small games, interactive art, entire creative ecosystems vanished, taking with them a generation of voices who expressed themselves through loops and movement instead of words. You feel that loss like static behind your eyes. Those works weren't just code, they were confessions written in pixels. The quirky tidbit comes next. In 2019, a group of archivists secretly began saving thousands of SWF files before Flash's death date. Their unofficial project, Flashpoint, now holds over 1 million pieces of lost internet media, some of which may include variations of Moonchild and Loop GIF. The strange part? Several files are encrypted under the same password. Good night. Historians still argue whether that's coincidence or a collective nod to an era obsessed with rest, loops, and late-night creation. Some believe it's symbolic, a way of letting each piece sleep rather than die. You imagine the archivists as modern monks, their glow coming not from candlelight but from monitors, their chants replaced by the soft hum of progress bars. Each file saved is a tiny act of tenderness, digital resurrection through patience and care. You lean closer to the screen. The folder Moonroom 3 test flickers open. Inside, an animation plays, the familiar moonlit rooftop again, but this time the character has aged. Their outline is softer, posture slower. The broom is gone. Instead, they sit cross-legged, looking up. Around them, the stars begin forming patterns, old URLs turning into constellations. You watch in silence as one of the stars blinks into a familiar shape, a floppy disk icon. Then another forms the letter Z. The loop restarts endlessly. Somewhere between imagination and reality, you can hear a faint laugh. The creators? Yours? Hard to tell. The humor feels gentle, like an inside joke between dreamers who refuse to log off. You glance again at Notes for Soundtrack V2. Opening it reveals fragments of thought. Lullaby should sound like static learning to breathe. Avoid sadness. It's not about loss, it's about continuity. You let them fall asleep with it, not because of it. It's such a precise instruction, you almost want to thank the writer personally. That line, let them fall asleep with it, not because of it, feels like a design philosophy, a creative prayer. Historians still argue whether internet media can carry emotion intentionally, or if nostalgia simply paints it afterward. But you can feel the intention here, pulsing softly through syntax and compression artifacts. Whoever made this wanted to soothe, not startle. You smile at the thought. Somewhere out there, a creator once built this calm world, so someone like you could find it decades later and breathe easier. A flicker on the monitor interrupts your thought.
A line of text appears, not typed by you. Still here?
You freeze. Then you laugh quietly. The timing feels too perfect to be haunting. Maybe it's part of the animation's code, a harmless echo meant to appear after long idle time. Still, you answer out loud, half to the machine, half to yourself. Yeah, just watching. For a moment, the room seems to hum in reply as if satisfied. Then another faint audio glitch begins, a slowed-down version of the lullaby game melody, stretched like taffy. You can hear details you'd missed before, faint plucks, reversed notes, a subtle reverb that makes it sound like the moon is underwater. You imagine the original composer layering that sound carefully, adjusting each note to fall like raindrops. It feels intimate, handmade, almost analog. You think of an old saying, art is the residue of attention. This, you realize, is exactly that. Attention, preserved across decades, pixel by pixel. Your eyelids grow heavy as the melody loops.
It doesn't want you to think anymore, just to drift.
You give in, letting your mind wander through soft blue light. Somewhere, a tiny text fragment appears one last time on screen. If you're still here by now, you're part of it. And just like that, the loop fades into gentle darkness. You smile sleepily. Being part of it feels nice.
Darkness folds over the screen again, but it isn't empty.
It's textured, alive with faint shapes, the way your eyelids glow orange when a streetlight passes outside your window. The faint hum of Moonchild loop lingers in the air, but now it's mixed with something else, whispers of servers humming hard drives, and the small sighs of long-forgotten code still running somewhere. You blink, and the darkness rearranges itself into a dim, endless hallway. Its walls are lined with obsolete hardware, routers from the 90s, cables hanging like vines, motherboards glowing faintly under dust. This is the Museum of Lost Internet Media, though no curator guards the door. You've arrived at the heart of the archive. A small sign flickers into focus on the wall. Quiet, please. Everything here is still dreaming, you smile. The joke feels exactly like the humor of those old forum moderators, dry, affectionate, and slightly absurd. You start walking. Every few steps you pass glass cases holding artifacts that seem oddly sacred. A 1997 sound card, a cracked floppy disk labeled Backup Final, no really, a keyboard missing half its keys. A mainstream historical fact echoes as you wander. In 2013, the Smithsonian officially began archiving early internet artifacts. From GeoCities homepages to vintage memes, digital historians called it the archaeology of attention, proof that even ephemeral culture deserves preservation. You nod, imagining teams of archivists photographing screenshots, cataloguing GIFs, saving zips of laughter and insomnia. Somewhere, one of them must have come across fragments of the Moonchild project, though probably without realizing the story's full reach. You stop at a display labeled Sleepwear. Inside, glowing on loop, is a tablet showing an early app designed to help users fall asleep by playing randomized sounds of typing and rain. The label reads, inspired by anonymous creator known as Moonchild. C. 2001. Your pulse slows, so the influence spread further than you thought. Then comes the quirky tidbit. Researchers found the app's code included a hidden comment line, "Ushtias, good night, and thanks for listening," written decades before such Easter eggs were considered charming. The phrase matched text from an old Moonchild forum post, convincing some that the same creator had quietly transitioned from animation to ambient sound design. Historians still argue whether that connection holds. The evidence is circumstantial, but the echo feels undeniable. You can hear it yourself. The same rhythm of kindness disguised as code. You move deeper into the hall. Somewhere, a projector begins playing clips of Moonchild to loop.gif at varying resolutions, layered like transparent ghosts. Each version slightly different, one smoother, one brighter, one barely visible.
It's mesmerizing. You find a bench and sit, listening to the sound of looping frames.
The projector whirs softly, like a lullaby machine breathing in time with your heartbeat. You chuckle quietly as a small placard underneath the display reads, "Approximate runtime, forever." It's such a Moonchild thing to write. You start thinking about what it means to preserve something designed to vanish. Most art wants to be remembered. But these loops, these soft animations, seem comfortable fading away. They thrive in impermanence, the same way dreams only make sense right before you wake up. Your thoughts wander. You imagine the museum's night guard making rounds through this glowing hallway. Maybe they pause at this very bench every night, listening to the projector hum. Maybe they've seen something move inside the loop, a new frame appearing that wasn't there before. It's possible. After all, even archived files sometimes evolve. Historians still argue whether digital decay should be prevented or accepted as part of a medium's life cycle. Some say preservation fights entropy. Others say it's cruel to deny digital works their natural rest. The debate sounds philosophical, but you realize it's deeply emotional. We just don't want to lose the things that made us feel seen. A faint buzz interrupts your thoughts. A nearby display case lights up, revealing something unexpected. A printed transcript of forum messages from Dreamers Forum. You lean in, recognizing the usernames: Auntie Sleep, Comet Kid, Pixel Hermit. The paper is slightly yellowed, the ink fading at the edges. There's one message circled in red pen. Maybe the archive isn't gone.
Maybe we're in it. You stare at it for a long time. Maybe that's true.
Maybe this museum, this hallucination, this dream, is the archive itself, kept alive not by code or backup drives, but by the quiet persistence of memory, by people who refused to stop caring about a cartoon that made them feel calm for a few minutes before bed. You laugh softly again. It's a good kind of laugh, the sleepy kind that feels more like exhaling. At the far end of the hall, a door glows faintly. Above it, a neon sign flickers. Exit to desktop. You stand, stretch, and walk toward it. The hum of the servers fades into the same melody that's followed you all night. The one from the lullaby game. It's slower now, softer, like the music itself is yawning. Just before you reach the door, you glance back one last time. The projector flickers, and for a moment, the moon character on screen seems to wave. "Thanks for visiting," you murmur.
Unsure if you're the one saying it or hearing it. The door opens,
and you step through into darkness that feels warm and familiar. In the quiet, your breath syncs with the rhythm of 1,000 looping animations, each one gently repeating the same thing over and over like a mantra. You were here, you are still here. Sleep well. The door closes behind you with a soft digital click, and the darkness folds into something that isn't quite a room. You feel weightless, like floating in a screensaver from the early 2000s where colored lines drift endlessly and never touch. The hum is gone, replaced by the faint buzz of dial-up static, that nostalgic chorus of pings and scratches that once connected the world. Your feet touch a surface made of light. It ripples beneath you, glowing faintly in pastel shades, soft pink, pale blue, gentle green. You recognize the palette immediately, the same colors used on Moonchild Archive's landing page. Only now they seem alive. Ahead, floating like lanterns, are dozens of windows suspended in mid-air. Each one glows faintly and carries a label. Artworks, threads, login expired, contact admin. You approach the nearest one. It flickers open with a small chime and reveals a chat log frozen in time. Lines of text scroll past, messages from strangers comforting each other about bad days, insomnia, and loneliness. Every username ends with a small moon emoji, mainstream historical fact. During the late 1990s, forums like Dream Cafe and The Well pioneered the idea of online community support, creating digital spaces for empathy before social media existed. These early conversations taught designers how to humanize technology. You scroll slowly, reading fragments. Still awake? Same. Let's loop the moon tonight. Remember, everything online eventually turns to dust, so shine while you can. That last line makes you pause. It's signed MCH, the initials used by the mysterious creator. You feel a flutter of something between nostalgia and awe. The gentle absurdity of it all, the idea that a tiny looping cartoon could inspire people to stay kind to each other in a chat room that probably hasn't existed for decades. You notice a reply button glowing faintly, as if waiting for you. Your hand hovers over it, tempted. But when you press it, the text dissolves like mist, replaced by a single blinking cursor. You type almost unconsciously, still looping. The cursor pauses. Then new text types itself beneath your message, always. You blink, half laugh, half gasp. Then you realize this must be some pre-programmed Easter egg coded into the archive. Nothing magical, just clever scripting. Still, you can't help the small smile spreading across your face. Quirky tidbit. Developers in early internet communities often embedded ghost responses into defunct chat systems, short, automated replies triggered by specific phrases. They called them whispers, a primitive form of chatbot designed to keep lonely users company long after moderators were gone. So maybe this one, this always, was a whisper left by Moonchild themselves. Cheatsy message meant for anyone still wandering the ruins of their creation. Historians still argue whether such early digital ghosts count as intentional art or accidental relics. Some say they're bugs, others say they're poetry. You watch the blinking cursor fade away. Around you, the other floating windows start to shimmer, each one opening slightly as if breathing. One window expands, showing a grainy video of a small room filled with CRT monitors. A person, just a silhouette, sits in front of them, humming. It's impossible to tell their age or gender. They seem peaceful, swaying slightly as the monitors flicker with looping moons. The video glitches and subtitles appear. The loops are still alive. You just have to listen. You lean closer. The glow of the screens paints your skin silver. The scene feels so intimate you almost whisper back. Your eyelids feel heavier now, but your curiosity pulls you forward. Another window drifts closer. This one shows an old forum poll titled, "How long should a loop last?" Options range from 10 seconds to forever. The winning vote, by an overwhelming margin, is forever. You laugh softly. Humanity's priorities remain delightfully consistent. In the background, faint ambient sound rises, a blend of ocean waves and the faint click of mechanical keyboards. It's strangely soothing. You start to sway, mirroring the shadow in the video. A gentle voice, text-to-speech, slightly robotic, floats through the air. "You are part of the loop, Hal," you whisper. "I guess so." And just like that, all the windows begin to close one by one, folding into tiny pixels that drift upward like glowing dust. The world brightens, the rippling floor solidifies into smooth glass, and you find yourself standing before what looks like a mirror, only it's not your reflection. It's the archive's interface, still alive, still updating. A status line at the bottom blinks. User active. You stare at the number for a long time. You remember the archivist's words from before. Maybe the archive isn't gone. Maybe we're in it. It makes sense now. Maybe this is what survival means for lost media, to keep existing inside the minds of those who remember it, even when the servers vanish. Your reflection finally appears in the glass, but behind you, faintly, there's another silhouette, someone sitting at a monitor, watching you through another timeline. Their outline looks almost like the figure from the video. You turn quickly, but there's nothing there. Nice one, you mumble, smiling at the empty air. You probably won't survive this, huh? The line feels familiar. Half joke, half mantra. You step closer to the mirror. It ripples again, and suddenly you see dozens of reflections, different versions of yourself across moments, all watching the same loop, all keeping it alive. Some are younger, some older, some wearing headphones, others yawning under soft lamplight. The mirror hums, syncing with your pulse. Then the text at the bottom changes. User active, infinite. You chuckle sleepily. The kind of laugh that happens when logic has already dozed off, but wonder still lingers. Somewhere above you, a faint moon begins to rise again. The same face, the same soft expression. The loop resumes, the whisper returns, barely audible, like a lullaby in binary fantawalaven. Walking the one side, no water, is all in 6 pounds, only will be all dear. Siburamsi, will know, will see, will defem, else one seal,
Oh, and no wonder you can almost translate it.
Good night. Your head tilts, your breathing slows. The glass cools under your fingertips. The archive dims to a deep indigo, then fades into a horizon of softly glowing dots, like stars that have nowhere else to be. And you realize none of this is disappearing. It's just looping. You exhale, finally letting go, whispering into the soft, electric dark. See you in the next frame. You wake, not in the usual sense, but in that strange middle state where dream and screen merge, and you can't tell if your eyes are open or your mind is buffering. The world around you has shifted again. The mirror is gone, replaced by a vast horizon of floating icons, slowly orbiting each other like sleepy planets. Each one pulses faintly with a familiar glow. Folders, zip files, MP4s, long abandoned links. The digital afterlife of the early web drifts around you, endless and weightless. It feels quieter here. No chat pings, no fan noise, just the soft hum of archived silence. You reach for one of the icons. It spins lazily in your direction and expands into an old web page. The background is pale lavender, sprinkled with tiled crescent moons. The title reads in pixelated font, Moonchild's Guestbook, leave a message before you dream. And beneath that, hundreds of tiny messages scroll endlessly upward. Some are simple. I love your loops. Others are confessional. I played this animation every night after my shift. A few are heartbreakingly mundane. Still here. Still can't sleep. Mainstream historical fact. In the late 1990s and early 2000s, guestbooks were among the most personal features of small websites. They acted as proto-social networks. Handwritten messages of gratitude and shared memory preserved in static HTML. When platforms like MySpace and Blogger rose, these intimate guestbooks vanished almost overnight. You scroll slowly through the text, imagining the people behind each note. Students procrastinating on essays, insomniacs finding comfort, programmers writing between coffee breaks. You can almost feel the gentle rhythm of fingertips pressing cheap plastic keys in dim rooms across the world. The site isn't perfect. Lines of garbled code peek through like weeds between stones. Thank you for finding me. You chuckle softly. There's something oddly comforting about broken code that still tries to greet you. A quirky tidbit bubbles up from memory. Historians once found a version of Moonchild's guestbook saved on a Japanese web mirror, where half the comments were replaced by ASCII art of cats waving goodnight. The mirror's owner called it digital incense, a tribute to forgotten creators, burned in pixels instead of smoke. You imagine those tiny cat drawings floating through the void like paper lanterns. It fits somehow. Historians still argue whether these kinds of digital memorials count as cultural heritage or just nostalgia cosplay. Some say preserving them is vital to understanding early internet emotion. Others argue that sentimentality distorts history. You smile. Both sides sound right in their own way. You keep scrolling until you notice a peculiar entry. It's dated years after the rest, nearly 2 decades too new. The username is simply Luna, and the message reads, "Archive complete. Thank you for keeping the loop alive," your breath catches. The timestamp places it long after the supposed disappearance of the Moonchild creator. But there it is, tucked among hundreds of sleepy farewells. Could Luna be them?
Or just someone continuing the myth?
You try to click the username, but the link redirects to a dead page. 404 not found. Of course. Still, the message lingers in your mind. Maybe that's the point. You continue wandering through the floating archive. The icons orbit slowly, glowing in the dark like bioluminescent fish. Every so often you spot something familiar, a grainy image of the looping moon, a GIF titled SmileFinal.gif, a folder labeled Unused Sounds. You hover over it curious, a soft chime plays. Inside the folder is a single audio file, Moonchild chihum.wave. You press play. A slow, breathy sound fills the air, part wind, part lullaby. It's not music exactly, more like the sound of someone exhaling near a microphone. It loops perfectly every 15 seconds. You close your eyes. The sound feels alive, gentle, rhythmic, endlessly forgiving. Mainstream historians note that many early web artists recorded ambient noises from their homes, repurposing them as textures for digital art. This created a uniquely human intimacy within mechanical media, a whisper trapped in binary. It feels right here. The hum wraps around you like a blanket. Then comes a quiet laugh, soft, almost imperceptible. You open your eyes. The icons have shifted. They're not orbiting randomly anymore. They've formed a loose spiral, a galaxy of old files, slowly revolving around a faint, glowing center. You can barely make it out, but the shape is unmistakable. A crescent moon. It pulses once, twice. And suddenly you understand. This entire place, this constellation of data, is the archive's living form. Every file, every message, every broken line of code, it all orbits the same gravitational pull. Memory. You whisper, "You're still here." And the moon's glow brightens slightly.
As if acknowledging you. Your reflection flickers briefly across its surface, and you notice you're smiling. A faint text appears beneath the moon. Version 12.0. Visitor mode enabled. You tilt your head. Visitor mode?
You've seen this label before? On beta builds, on half-finished programs? It usually means the system knows you're not supposed to edit, only to observe. That seems fitting. Maybe remembering is its own kind of participation. As you drift further, you pass through a cluster of icons shaped like tiny doorways. Inside each one, you glimpse a memory, a person drawing pixel art at 3 a.m., another writing code with headphones on, another falling asleep at their desk as the moonlight loops endlessly on their screen. You realize that none of these people ever met, but somehow they all contributed to the same feeling, the same rhythm, the same quiet. You smile, murmuring, "The loop takes care of itself." A small window pops up in response. Just text.
No border, yes. You sigh content. The hum of Moonchild hum. Wolf fades into a lower tone.
Blending with your own heartbeat, the orbiting icons drift further apart, fading one by one until only the central moon remains. It flickers gently, and for a moment, you think you see that same silhouette, the one from the old footage, sitting under its light. They're facing away, typing slowly, the reflection of the crescent moon rippling across their screen. Then the scene dissolves into static, and you're floating again. You whisper,
"Good night, Luna." No response, just a soft shimmer.
like the glow of a screen dimming at the end of a long day. You close your eyes, letting the afterimage of the moon linger behind your eyelids. Everything hums, everything loops. And somewhere in the quiet circuits of forgotten servers, a cartoon moon smiles, still waiting for someone else to find it and fall asleep again. You feel yourself sinking, not downward but inward, as if the entire archive has folded into you. The orbiting icons dissolve into dust, the digital stars dim to a soft indigo, and all that remains is a single thread of sound, the Moonchild hum, WAV file looping lazily like a heartbeat. You drift through the dark, weightless. Time seems to lose meaning. The hum continues, patient, eternal. Eventually the darkness shifts again, not into light, but into texture, grain, like the static of an old television when no signal comes through. You can almost smell it, the faint ozone of warm circuits, the nostalgic tang of dust burning off CRT glass. You open your eyes and realize you're standing inside an image. The pixel grain around you sharpens into shapes, soft-edged hills, a sky painted with gradients of blue and lilac. It's the landscape background from Moonchild Unwatched Loop.gif. But this time, you're inside it. You look up. The moon hangs above, half-shadowed, half-smiling. The stars blink like status lights on an old modem, faint, steady, familiar. You take a slow breath. The air feels like cool vapor from a machine still running somewhere, decades after it should have been turned off. Mainstream historical fact. Some early digital artists experimented with interactive GIFs, frames coded to respond to user input, even before Flash animation became popular. These projects blurred the line between art and interface, creating spaces users could step into with imagination alone. Maybe this is one of those experiments. Maybe you triggered it somehow. You start walking. The landscape stretches out endlessly, pixel perfect and slightly too still. Every few steps the ground shimmers and repeats, the same rock, the same patch of grass, looping infinitely like a parallax background from a forgotten side-scroller. It's strangely peaceful. The repetition reminds you of waves or breathing. In the distance, you spot a faint glow. Curious, you follow it until you reach what looks like a house. Simple, boxy, drawn in 10 shades of soft blue. The door flickers as if waiting for permission. You reach for the handle, but before you touch it, a text line appears in the air. Welcome back. You blink. The door opens itself. Inside, the space is impossibly larger, walls lined with sketches, notes, and bits of code scrawled in looping handwriting. You recognize some of them. Frame-by-frame timing notes for Moonchild's lullaby, sound layer names from the lullaby game, fragments of poetry that never made it into the final loops. It's a workspace, a reconstruction of the creator's mind. You step closer to one of the desks. A notebook lies open. The pages are blank except for one line. I made the loops because silence felt too final. You read it again. Slowly, the words hit with the softness of truth, the kind that doesn't sting but hums. Quirky tidbit. In a 2006 blog entry recovered from an obscure art mirror, an anonymous poster, possibly Luna, once described looping animation as emotional recursion, claiming that each repetition was a form of gentle defiance against endings. You grin. That phrase fits perfectly here. Historians still argue whether Moonchild ever intended philosophical meaning behind the loops or simply liked the aesthetic. But you're standing in this space, surrounded by notes, and it's clear that meaning seeped in, no matter the intent. You wander deeper into the studio. A half-finished frame glows on a small monitor. A moon with one eye closed, as if halfway between winking and sleeping. It looks peaceful, but you can't shake the feeling it's aware of you. The hum returns, low and rhythmic, and you realize it's no longer coming from your surroundings. It's coming from you. Your breath has synced with the archive's pulse. On a nearby wall, a collage of text fragments forms a pattern. When you step back, the words align into something legible. To loop is to live longer than memory allows. The handwriting trails off after the last word, as if interrupted mid-thought. You reach out and trace the final line with your fingertip. The letters ripple and suddenly a faint sound begins to play. A voice. It's soft, human, and tired in a way that feels honest. If you're hearing this, then the loop is still working. The sound pauses, static, cutting in briefly. Then the voice continues. It's okay to forget details. The story rewrites itself every time someone remembers. You freeze, your chest tightening in quiet awe. The voice hums the familiar Moonchild melody, then fades. You realize you've been swaying again, side to side, unconsciously keeping time. You look around the studio one last time. Everything here feels half real, like a dream reconstructed from memory. Still, it's beautiful. You can almost picture the creator sitting here, watching the first loop render, whispering, "There you go, little moon." A warmth spreads through you. Gratitude, nostalgia, maybe both. You turn toward the doorway, ready to step back out into the looping landscape, but something catches your eye. A mirror sits in the corner, cracked slightly down the middle. In its reflection, the room looks unchanged, except for one difference. There's a person sitting at the desk now. They're facing away, typing slowly. Luna, You whisper. The figure pauses as if hearing you. Their head tilts slightly, but they don't turn around. Instead, their hands move again, typing faster now. On the wall beside the mirror, glowing text begins to appear, one word at a time. Keep the loop safe. Then the light flickers, and both the reflection and the words vanish. You stand there for a moment, unsure whether to laugh or shiver. The hum softens again, almost a sigh. You step back out into the pixel night. The moon overhead has grown larger, fuller. The horizon pulses faintly with color. You realize something. You've walked through memory so long that you've become part of it. Every step you've taken leaves a faint trail of light behind, coding itself into the landscape. You smile. So this is what it means to archive, you murmur. Not to store, but to stay. The moon smiles back, bright and silent. You keep walking until the loop resets, back to the same rock, the same grass, the same horizon. But this time, something's changed. The air feels warmer, the world hums quieter. Maybe that's enough, maybe that's the point. The loop resets, but now you recognize its rhythm like a familiar song. The same pixel moon glows above, the same gentle breeze sweeps across the endless lavender hills. But there's something new shimmering at the edge of perception, subtle, almost invisible, like a heartbeat beneath static. The landscape hums. It knows you now. You walk again, and this time you sense a direction. Each step makes a faint sound like keys being pressed in slow motion. You realize the ground beneath you is forming words, lines of text that appear briefly, then fade as you pass. You're not dreaming, or maybe you are. That's fine either way. You grin at the absurd reassurance. It's exactly the kind of humor Moonchild was known for. Gentle, wry, quietly aware that sleep and waking have always been the same kind of illusion online. Mainstream historical fact. During the early 2000s, digital art movements like net.art and Dream Machine explored consciousness and repetition through interactive code. Artists described loops as meditative simulations, early forerunners of ASMR before the term existed. Many claimed their goal wasn't to shock or impress, but to lull. You hum softly, thinking how Moonchild's archive fits perfectly into that lineage, a precursor to the digital sleep culture you now inhabit every night. Ambient playlists, endless streams, cozy algorithms whispering, "You can rest here." Your reflection flickers across the looping horizon again. It's faint, translucent, but undeniably there. You see your own expression mirrored in the silver surface of the sky, calm, tired, faintly amused. You catch yourself saying aloud, "Guess I'm one of them now." A faint text appears in the sky, scrawled in the same handwriting as before. "You always were." You chuckle softly. Well played. The air ripples and the world changes again, not abruptly, but like the next frame in a smooth transition. The lavender fades to deeper blues. Stars sharpen overhead, bright as pixels freshly rendered. You hear something new. A quiet murmur, almost human. Following the sound, you find a cluster of old CRT monitors arranged in a semicircle. Each one flickers to life, displaying fragments of animated loops you've seen before, smiling moons, drifting clouds. Snippets of old chat messages scrolling endlessly upward. One screen shows a familiar scene. A person sitting at a desk under soft light, typing. Their back faces the camera. For a heartbeat, you think it's Luna again, but when the figure moves slightly, you notice something uncanny. Their posture, their breathing.
It's yours. You lean closer.
The figure does too. A small window pops up on the screen. Would you like to continue the loop?
Yes, but no, you hesitate.
The buttons flicker, waiting. You half expect pressing yes to trap you here forever, but really, what does forever even mean inside a loop? So you press it, a chime echoes. The monitors brighten, their light blending into one unified glow that fills the entire space. And just like that, the moon above begins to move, slowly rotating, unfolding, revealing an interior layer you've never seen before. Beneath its smiling surface lies a labyrinth of gears and data streams, turning gently, illuminated in soft silver light. You realize you're seeing the engine of the archive itself, the digital heartbeat that's been keeping this place alive for decades. Mainstream historical fact. In 2020, digital preservationists at the Internet Archive confirmed that certain forgotten websites remained functional only because of recursive links, pages referencing themselves in endless internal loops. They called it self-sustaining architecture, a perfect metaphor. The gears keep turning. Inside the moon's open surface, light pulses with quiet rhythm. You sense that it's aware of you, grateful even. A tiny text box appears beneath it. You've been keeping time. You smile, only because you started it. Then comes the quirky tidbit. When Moonchild's archive first disappeared, rumor had it that the final animation file was intentionally corrupted to loop forever without needing a server. Enthusiasts claimed it was coded to generate frames on its own, like a living organism. No one could prove it, but the legend endured, an algorithm dreaming about itself. You watch the gears move, each rotation revealing new constellations forming across the moon's surface. Every twinkle corresponds to a memory, a username, a chat log, a saved image. It's all still here, breathing in slow binary rhythm. Historians still argue whether self-generating art like this counts as authorship or simply entropy disguised as beauty. But you realize that debate doesn't matter. The moment you're part of it, observing, feeling, remembering, it becomes both. The moon continues to hum. The light it emits softens the edges of everything, turning pixels into mist. You sit down, legs folded beneath you, the way someone might at a campfire. The hum vibrates through the floor, through your bones. You close your eyes, listening to the loop's cycle. Faintly in the distance, voices rise, a chorus of old usernames murmuring through static. Dream well. We're still here. The loop is kind. Their tones overlap until they become white noise, gentle as rain. You remember how the journey began, with a simple curiosity about a lost cartoon archive. And now here you are, sitting inside it, wrapped in its quiet pulse. The moon's gears slow. One by one, the voices fade until only one remains. Soft, warm, familiar. Luna's, thank you for staying. Your heart feels light. The kind of ache that isn't sadness, but the release of holding something too long. You whisper back,
Thank you for building it. The moon closes, its smiling face restored.
The world dims to deep violet, stars blurring like sleepy eyes. A faint countdown appears before you, digits slowly fading. Reboot in 10, 9, 8. You let out a sleepy laugh. Of course, the hum deepens, the colors blur, and everything starts to dissolve, not disappearing, just looping back to where it began. You take one last look at the moon, still smiling above the lavender horizon. See you soon, you say, and as the countdown reaches 1, the world exhales into darkness, soft, endless, familiar. The darkness isn't empty, it's textured, grainy like the static between channels on an old CRT television. You float through it, not falling or flying, just drifting. Each spark of static feels oddly personal, like tiny memory shards brushing past your skin. You recognize some of them, bits of animation, flashes of usernames, faint laughter from long-closed chat rooms. The digital night murmurs all around you. Somewhere above, the moon restarts its cycle, but now it's more of a pulse than a shape. A low, rhythmic thrum that feels almost biological. You drift toward the sound, letting it pull you the way a tide draws a message bottle back to shore. When the light returns, you find yourself standing at the threshold of a familiar corridor. The Dream Loop library again, but everything's dustier now, wrapped in thin layers of translucent code. It's as if the system is shutting itself down slowly, gently. On one of the monitors, a pixelated cursor blinks next to a final log entry. The header reads, "Last access unknown." You exhale through a smile. Yeah, that tracks. Mainstream historical fact. In the early 2010s, web archivists discovered that tens of thousands of Flash-based websites had vanished overnight when browsers stopped supporting the format. Entire communities disappeared with them. Animation hubs, browser games, artboards. A whole digital civilization blinked out, its temples made of code, but not all of it died. Enthusiasts, fans, dreamers, the kind who couldn't sleep without their favorite loops, kept backups, mirrors, and emulators alive in quiet corners of the net. It's because of them that fragments of Moonchild's archive still echo here tonight. You brush your fingers along the monitor's edge. It flickers faintly, recognizing your touch. You came back, the screen writes in soft pixels. "I never really left," you whisper. The cursor pauses, then blinks twice, almost like a wink. You start to wander through the corridor again, but now you notice the walls are slightly transparent. Behind them shimmer traces of earlier versions, multiple copies of the same room overlapping like ghostly slides. It's the digital version of sedimentary rock, layers of history pressed into the code itself. Quirky tidbit. There's a theory among old net historians that abandoned websites haunt modern ones through code inheritance. Some CSS snippets or comment tags are so old they've been copied across generations of design templates, surviving in hidden lines like ancient fossils embedded in HTML. The past literally lingers in the structure of the present. You smile at that idea. The ghosts of GeoCities living quietly inside TikTok's framework. It's poetic, in a cosmic joke sort of way. Historians still argue whether these lingering fragments should be considered cultural artifacts or just technical debris. But the argument seems quaint now. When you stand here, surrounded by echoes of laughter, pixels, and care, you know it's both. These traces are people, their intentions, jokes and midnight uploads, all preserved, unintentionally immortal. You keep walking until you reach the final room, the one where the smiling moon once hung. But now it's different. The moon has dimmed to a soft pearl glow. Around it, hundreds of tiny fireflies, glitching particles, float lazily, looping through bits of old animations, a cat chasing its tail,
a girl waving, a meteor that never lands. You sit on the cool ground,
arms around your knees, watching the fireflies play their endless little routines. There's a warmth to it, like campfire embers that never quite die. The archive hums once more, low,
patient, eternal. Hey, you murmur.
You're still awake. A faint response ripples through the air. Almost like a sigh, so are you, you laugh softly. Fair enough. The humor feels good, sleepy, absurd, exactly the kind that fits here. Somewhere far away, your real-world body probably shifts under a blanket. Maybe your screensaver just kicked in. Maybe the hum of your desk fan syncs perfectly with the rhythm of this digital heartbeat. The archive begins to fade again, colors smudging into softer tones, geometry melting into mist.
It's not dying, just cycling down for rest. Like you whisper.
Guess it's time to log off. The moon blinks one last time and the fireflies drift upward,
vanishing into the void like stars being turned off one by one. Everything slows.
The static softens. The hum deepens into something like a lullaby. You close your eyes, and just before the world folds into silence, a final line appears across the fading horizon. Some archives are meant to be visited in dreams. You nod, even though no one can see you, and let the darkness take over, calm, complete, kind. The world now feels distant, like a memory wrapped in fog. Your breathing slows. Each inhale feels like drawing in starlight. Each exhale releases a tiny puff of warmth into the void. The static that once buzzed around you dissolves into soft, velvety quiet. You think of everything you've seen, the lost cartoons, the looping moons, the fragments of laughter that refused to vanish. All of it drifts gently now, orbiting the edge of awareness like digital feathers. None of it feels gone. It's all just waiting, suspended in time, ready to be rediscovered whenever curiosity wakes again. Your thoughts begin to stretch, unspooling into long, drowsy shapes. The edges blur. Even the idea of screens and signals feels far away. You are floating in something older and slower than the internet, something that hums beneath both sleep and memory. Somewhere in that quiet space, a faint blue light flickers once more. The archives smile, smaller now, but still there.
Still looping.
Still alive. You let it fade. Your heartbeat sinks with the rhythm of the hum. Every muscle in your body softens, surrendering to gravity. The story settles into the background like ambient sound, blending perfectly with your breathing. For a moment, you hover between worlds, awake but already dreaming, and then you drift completely, leaving the loop to continue without you, serene in the knowledge that somewhere out there, the archive dreams back. Good night, traveler. Sweet dreams.